Hey everyone. Okay, welcome to part 3 of week 2. Okay, if you have not watched lecture 1, and then you've not watched the adulterous woman analysis, lecture 2, watch those first prior to watching this one. Okay, the first lecture I went over some of the main ideas, some of the philosophical ideas associated with this unit. And I went over construction of paragraphs. Okay. Then I wanted you to watch the analysis of the story of an hour. Wait, hold on. Yeah, I wanted you to watch the story of an hour analysis. Then I wanted you to read through the Simone de Beauvoir quotes, which I'll show you where those are. Okay. And now watching this lecture, because this lecture I'm going to talk about how to take a quote from the Simone de Beauvoir document and apply it to your understanding of the story of an hour, and then how to take a quote and include it into a paragraph in your analysis. Okay, because that is the homework assignment. So you're gonna go to weekly lessons, week 2. All right, so this is the story of an hour assignment. After reading the chapter title, don't worry about that. Blah blah. Okay. Explain the Le Petit Mort that Miss Mallard experiences in the story. What part of her dies and what part of her is now fully alive? Okay. I go over a lot of that in that takes a combination of both lecture 1, where I talk about the Le Petit Mort in general, and then in lecture 2, where I go over the story. Okay, so you're going to take parts, you're going to take information from both those lectures and put that into a well-constructed paragraph in proper MLA formatting. And so you need to also take the information that I discussed about how to write a really good paragraph, and make sure that your paragraph has a claim, support, and analysis. I'm gonna turn down the Grateful Dead. Too loud. Okay. Then number 2 on the same assignment, you're going to take a quote from Simone de Beauvoir and use the story of an hour to illustrate the point that de Beauvoir makes in her statement. So right here is where we have these quotes. Open this up, and here we have a bunch of quotes from her book. Okay, there's 8 pages. This quote's from page 691. This quote is from page 723. All right, every quote has a page number. This is from page 6, page 7, page 14, page 14 to 15. This is important because I'm going to show you in a moment why. You make sure you know the page numbers. Okay, 110. All right, so there are a total of 27 quotes for you to choose from. Okay, you want to read through these and find a quote that you're like, hey, that reminds, yeah, I see how that's connected to the story of an hour. Okay, so I would like for you to find a quote first. When you find a quote, then you're going to go through this process that I'm about to show you. Okay. Here we go. Using quotes in your story of an hour analysis. From current slide. There we go. Okay. Using quotes in your story of an hour analysis. First, when you open up your document, you got to make sure you set up proper MLA formatting. You can use the MLA template that I posted in week 1 and then just save it as a new document if you want to, or you can do it yourself. You got to make sure that you have your last name and page number in the top right-hand side. Make sure that you have your first and last name. You have Mr. Byers, you have English 1102, and the due date for this assignment. And then your title is centered and your paragraphs are indented. and that they are double spaced, and that you don't have extra spaces between your paragraphs, and that you select justify alignment, that it looks like this. Okay, it looks like this. You can use the template that I posted, or you can go through step by step and do it yourself, whichever one you want. And the template is what? I posted that template in week 1. Okay. Titles and quotation marks. So you're going to be referring to the story of an hour in this assignment. All right. So you got to make sure that you know how to do it correctly. And if you reference the second sex, like you actually say the title of that book, that is written in a different way than the story of an hour. Okay. Because titles of short stories, like the story of an hour, and poems, like which we'll do for unit 2, and articles, which you will reference when you start doing research, go inside of quotation marks. So see, story of an hour, the road not taken, understanding Chopin, great song, Bertha. Ooh, great song. Okay, titles of books, films, magazines, newspapers, albums, TV shows are written in italics. So if you cite the title of the book, The Second Sex, which is where all those quotes from Simone de Beauvoir comes from, then you need to use italics. Mindhunter, Star Wars. These are all names, titles of books or films or magazines or newspapers. Okay. Now the articles are in parentheses. I'm sorry. Articles are in quotation marks. The title of the book or the magazines themselves are in italics. Okay. You gotta make sure you do that correctly. You will lose points every time you incorrectly punctuate a title of a short story or a poem or an article or a book. Okay, so then you are going to be using direct quotes. You should have used some direct quotes last year in 1101. So now we're going to continue using direct quotes. Okay. So you will need to use quotation marks. Quotation marks are used in titles, as we just saw, and in direct quotes from the work. In this assignment, I want you to directly quote Simone de Beauvoir. Okay. Now look, again, this class is not about feminism and existentialism and all that mess. All right. This class is about writing and about taking quotes and putting quotes into your writing and expounding upon your own ideas. All right. So I've given you a document full of quotes, and that document could have been anything. I picked feminism and existentialism, but it could have been on history, it could have been biology, it doesn't matter what it is. I gave you direct quotes that I want you to pick and put into your paper. All right, because in college, throughout college, you'll be writing papers where you have sources and you're quoting from those sources and citing those sources. So you need to learn all that in this class, which we started in 1101, and that we're continuing in 1102. In 1101, most of you only had to write one paper with quotation marks in it. But for this class, all 3 papers are using quotes. So we're doing early practice now on making sure that you can write a paragraph using quotes correctly. So that way I can grade it, give you feedback before we actually start writing essays. Because like if you bomb a classroom assignment, who cares? It's like one point out of 100 points. Okay, it doesn't matter. But if you bomb essay 1, which is 25% of your grade, that's not good. So we're doing this in the practice now, so that way you make sure that you get it down. Okay. So commas go inside of quotation marks. Okay. A lot of people would have written something like this. In Story of an Hour, quotation mark, comma, the protagonist dies of a heart attack. That's incorrect. The comma needs to go inside of quotation marks, inside of the quotation marks. In quotation mark, story of an hour, comma, quotation mark, The protagonist dies of a heart attack. All right, same thing here. This is incorrect. Periods go inside of quotation marks. So it needs to be written like this. I couldn't believe that she died from a, quote, heart condition, period, quotation mark. Okay? So whether you're referring to the title of the story or you're doing a direct quote, you need to have your punctuation inside of the quotation marks. In-text citations. In-text citations. All right. So all this means is that when you directly quote someone, you have to put who said it. You got to include the author. All right. You got to reference whether this is research or a book or a poem. You have to state who said this. And so you put their name either in the sentence or you put their name in parentheses, which is what we call a parenthetical citation. And if it comes from a book, you always have to include a page number from which that line came from. So here's two examples. In this example, the author, Wordsworth, his name is stated in the sentence. Wordsworth stated that romantic poetry was marked by a, quote, spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings, quotation mark, and then we have a parentheses. Now look, the parenthetical citation, this goes outside of the quotation mark, but before the period. Okay? A lot of people are going to do this incorrectly. They're going to have this 263 right after feelings, and they're going to have the quotation mark after it. That's incorrect. A lot of people are going to have feelings, period, quotation mark, and then the parenthetical citation. That's incorrect. The parenthetical citation right here, that's indicating that this quote came from page 263. This is not part of the quote, so it's outside the quote. But it is a part of the sentence, so it goes before the period. Got to make sure that if you do not do that correctly, you will lose points. Okay? Now, if in a sentence you don't want to state the author's name, you just want to have the quote in the sentence, that's fine. You could write something like, romantic poetry is characterized by the spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings. And then you include the author's name in the parentheses. Okay. So parentheses, Wordsworth, space, page number, parentheses, period. All right. You either state the author's name in the sentence or you put that author's name in the parenthetical citation. Wordsworth extensively explored the role of emotion in the creative process. Now look, this is a reference to Wordsworth without a direct quote, but we still add a page number. Okay. Make sure you're always writing in third person. Always third person. Never I or me or I think. Don't begin with statements like, in my opinion. Always write in present tense, unless when talking about something that happened in the past within the story. Okay. Always present tense. She is walking. She saw. She sees. Because when I turn to that book, that scene in the book, it's happening as I'm reading it. All right, so it would be something like, you would write something like, when Janine sees the guard, she hopes to get his attention. When Josephine finds out her husband is killed on the train, she is at first overcome with grief and then pure joy. Okay. All right. Integrating quotes. Here we go. We do not want to use what are called drop quotes. A drop quote is when you have a quote that stands by itself as a complete sentence. These are incorrect. Every quote you use has to be integrated into a sentence. All right, it cannot be a sentence by itself. Meaning, look, here's an example. Okay. There are many examples of self-analysis in Plato's philosophy, period. Quotation. The unexamined life is not worth living. Plato 45, period. This is incorrect. See how this quote is all by itself? There's a period here, we have a quotation mark, we have the statement, and then we have a period. That's incorrect. Plato thinks people should analyze their own lives, period. Quotation mark. The unexamined life is not worth living. Again, incorrect. You have to integrate the quote. Plato thinks people should analyze their own lives because, quotation mark, the unexamined life is not worth living. Okay? That is what you have to do. You have to integrate the quotes. You cannot have a quote by itself. And you can integrate quotes by introducing the quote with a signal phrase before they appear in your paper. So you can always say something like, the author comments, the author describes, the author explains, the author reports, the author thinks, the author points out, the author claims, the author contends, the author asks, the author insists, the author finds, the author predicts. Okay, there's plenty of verbs to use. All right. Okay, so what we're going to do is this. I'm going to talk to you about how to integrate a quote into your assignment, into your homework, okay? All right. First off, when you find a quote that you like, you're not using the entire quote. I mean, there's like a chunk of quotes that, I mean, it's like a whole paragraph of a quote. You're not using that entire quote, okay? You're not. You got to break it down, all right, to nothing longer than a line. You're not using long quotes. You're using short. Anything also like chunks, all right? Quote phrases rather than complete sentences. All right, none of you are writing a paper long enough this semester to justify a paragraph of a quote. We're using a sentence or just individual words and phrases. So let's say this, okay? Let's say this is a quote that you want to integrate into your first paragraph, okay, or second paragraph, whatever. Here's the quote. The entire quote is, the woman as lover becomes a masochist because of a sense of love. Out of a sense of love, she enters into a state of humiliation because she becomes to the object of someone else. She becomes a narcissist because it is out of the sense of self-love and focus that she allows herself to be objectified. But the woman in love is not only a narcissist, alienated in herself. She also experiences a passionate desire to go beyond her own limits and become infinite. Thanks to the intervention of another who has access to infinite reality. She abandons herself first to love to save herself, but the paradox of adulterous love is that in order to save herself, she ends up totally disavowing herself. Her feeling takes on a mystical dimension. She no longer asks God to admire her or approve her. She wants to melt into him, forget herself in his arms. Okay, so let's say like I read this chunk and I liked it. Okay, I would first just pick out things that I would want to say in my paper. I'm not quoting this entire chunk. I want to mention, masochist, and she enters into a state of humiliation, maybe object of someone else, and allows herself to be objectified. That's what I want to use in my response. Okay, so maybe I'll go ahead and mark those things I want to use out of the giant paragraph. And notice I've not selected an entire sentence, just parts of sentences. Okay. So when you are breaking apart a quote, all right, like if you've decided that you want to use just part of a sentence, not an entire sentence, then you can use what's called parentheses. Use parentheses to indicate a removal of words between parts of a quote. All right. So if you end up deleting some of the words in between sentences, so like let's say like I was going to use like from here to here, and I just want object of someone else, allows yourself to be objectified. I might cut all this out by just having ... And then we use brackets when needing to change a word from the quote in order to make it fit grammatically in the sequence of the sentence, or to clarify a pronoun. When using a quote, you have to include the author's name in the sentence or include it in the parenthetical citation with the page number of the source. So with every single Baudrillard, so Simone de Beauvoir, there she is. Baudrillard is a French poet. Simone de Beauvoir, each of her quotes are I have with them the page number that the quote appears on. Okay, so like you have a PDF or you have a Word document of the Chopin story. It's on pages like 1, 2, and 3, and then de Beauvoir I have listed on there the page numbers in which those quotes appear in. Okay, so like here is an example of my paragraph. All right, I've taken here we have masochist, state of humiliation, object of someone else, allowing herself to be objectified, being alienated in herself. These come from these selections that I have pulled out from the original quote. So here I write, Chopin's Miss Mallard represents the masochistic, quotation mark, masochistic woman who automatically goes into a self-repressive state to fulfill her role as the woman-turned-object wife. De Beauvoir, 691. The French feminist philosopher Simone de Beauvoir believes that women have forever been giving up their identities, much in a self-loathing way, in order to conform to the societal requirements of marriage. In, quotation mark, the story of an hour, comma, inside the quotation mark, the heroine, Miss Mallard, is a lady who is, quote, young, with a fair, calm face, but her fullness cannot save her from the effects of repression that brought lines to her face. This is from page 2 of the story. The repression that she experiences is from having to, quote, enter into a state of humiliation, at becoming a, quote, object of someone else, de Beauvoir, 691, which in this case is Brentley, a man that seems nice enough and who, quote, she had loved, ... sometimes, but often she had not. But Chopin 3, period. By allowing herself, brackets, allowing is changed because originally it was like allows, by allowing herself to be objectified. In order to receive some sense of meaning, Miss Mallard has to repress her inner soul and sense of herself. Being, quote, alienated in herself keeps her from being possessed of self-assertion, which she eventually comes to realize, quote, as the strongest impulse of her being, Chopin 4. It isn't until the reality of her husband's death and the release of her captivity does she begin to drink in the elixir of life. Her desire to be loved by a man is in absolute conflict with her desire to love herself. Okay, so these come from the paragraph. All right, I'm not using the entire paragraph. I just took chunks out. And originally it says allows herself to be objectified. And so, but that would not fit here. Allows would be incorrect here. By allows herself to be objectified in order to receive some sense of meaning, Miss Mallard has to blank blank. So I use a bracket to change allows to allowing because that fits grammatically. Okay. I use a parentheses here because this sentence is shortened from the original sentence in the story of an hour. And this shows that there's some things missing from here to here, but that's all right. The bracket here is entered, this word but is entered in to help the meaning, to make it clear that there is a contrast here. All right. Possessed of self-assertion. Possessed is changed because it originally is possess. Okay. So this quote, I took chunks of Simone's quotes. There's never a full line There's never a chunk of quote. There's never like a real long quote. All right, and I integrated it into every sentence of my paper. That is sort of the end product of what you are doing. All right. So this week, make sure you have watched the Story of an Hour lecture. All right. Then you are going to complete the Story of an Hour assignment. Oh wait, this is wrong. You are not watching the Adulterous Woman analysis lecture. I don't think not until next. That's actually. All right, I fixed that. We're watching the week 2 lectures. You're reading the quotes from the second sex. You're completing the Story of an Hour assignment. And then you are to read The Adulterous Woman. Just read it. And then answer the discussion 2 posts about the Adulterous Woman. All right. Next week, I'll go over The Adulterous Woman. But I want you to first read it, and I want you to do the analysis. All right. And then we'll talk about it. If you have any questions, you know what to do. Maybe you don't. Email me. Okay. All right. Bye-bye.